Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Podcast. I'm Jason Abrams, and this is the place where we lift the curtain on the world of real estate like never before. Every week, I sit down with visionaries, pirates, and mavericks. We're here to document, demonstrate, and most importantly, demystify their game-changing models and systems. What secrets propel them to the top? And how are they living their dreams? This is about passion, it's about strategy, but above all, it's about real, tangible success. So buckle up and let's dive in. This is the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Podcast. Can you imagine growing up in the Amazon? I can't. Matter of fact, I didn't even know that I knew someone who did. But that's what we're going to talk about today. Friends, we have a guest today whose team does $150 million a year in one of the most competitive markets in the land, Boston, but a very specific set of Boston, right between Harvard and MIT. And the way they do it is a way that you have never heard. You see, I am talking about none other than Hudson Santana. Hudson is a developer. Now, I know what you're thinking, Jason, it's a show for real estate agents, but he's also a real estate agent. He runs a team and he develops, and he is going to tell us exactly how to look at properties in a different way, unlock the value that nobody sees, and make untold riches in the development side of the real estate business. Sit back and buckle up. This is Hudson Santana. Hudson Santana, long time. How are you, sir?
Doing great, man. Happy to be here.
We're thrilled to have you here because I think one of the things that you're doing is probably the most interesting thing I've heard about this calendar year. That's saying a lot because I spend a lot of time listening. So I can't wait to unpack it. But before we get there, I got to ask you the question I ask everybody. Hudson, how did you end up in the greatest industry in the world?
Through my beautiful wife. I was a unsatisfied, unhappy bartender.
Really?
Dating this beautiful woman. And she's like, I know you don't like what you're doing, but you do really well in real estate. By the way, I don't want you to work with me. So why don't you go work at that company and I stay in my company?
Wait, hang on a second. I'm going to get to this because I didn't know this part of this. This is too good. But even back further than that, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in the Amazon in Brazil, in a state called Rondônia, 1 hour away from the border of Brazil and Bolivia.
That's the most exotic answer we've ever gotten on this show.
Good.
Growing up in the Amazon, what is that even like?
It was great. I mean, it was simple, very simple. My state became my state in 1975. My city became a city, official city, in the year I was born, which I'm not going to share because I don't want people to, and I'll let them guess. So it's very raw, very, one of the towns I lived in, at 8 p.m. every night, they shut off the electricity for the town, and they will only restart the next day at 7 a.m. My dad was the head of the water company, but oftentimes the water that would come out of the drain was completely brown because they basically pumped the water from this river a few miles away from the city. So it's very different. I'm somebody that really understands the idea of appreciation. I think that's kind of what I like to think that helped me with having a little bit of success is actually appreciating things that most people in this country don't appreciate.
We're going to touch on that again as we go. But I want to ask, because the way you describe it, it doesn't sound like poverty to me because everyone is living the same way. Did you interpret it while you were growing up as growing up poor, or were you just growing up and that's how life was?
Yes, I think both. Unfortunately, just like in any situation, there's always the few people that do really well. In the town that I went to high school, only had one high school, period, in the whole town. And so all, the wealthy people for our reality, and everybody was in the same school, right? So there was always the 2 or 3 kids that had some means, but everybody else, was same reality. I will share one story that was very shocking for me. I thought we were poor, not like miserable, but like I thought, like, yeah, we don't really have any money. And then one of my friends from school were supposed to do a school assignment. And he's like, okay, let's go to your house. And I lived in a house on pilings that at night you can kind of see the light through but it was fine. That's how every other house was. But I show up at my friend's house and they literally lived on a dirt floor.
Wow.
Right. So whether you think you're doing really well, like my situation in Miami now, where I think I'm doing okay, and then I show up in Miami and I'm like poor, right? Compared to everybody else, it can always be worse. But that was the reality. So, you just made the best out of it.
How do you end up here?
So I finished high school in 2000, and my uncle was a sous chef at a restaurant in Boston. And my brother had finished the high school like the year before and came to Boston. And once I finished high school, they asked if I wanted to come to the US. And I was like, yeah, it was not really. They flew me in. They picked me up at the airport. I went to the apartment, showered, and he asked me if I wanted to go to work. And I said yes. And that literally within the next hour, I was already working. And
is there an immediate culture shock? Like, what's your first aha in those first couple of months here in Boston?
The first aha was being at the airport and seeing like a 4-year-old kid speaking English. To me, it was like mind-blowing. Because even in the Amazon public schools, we were supposed to have, there was an English class. We never learned anything. But it was so foreign. And then you show up and I'm like, how is this 4-year-old able to speak this language? Which I couldn't comprehend anything. So that was like the big shock.
It's so good. I never even would have thought of any of that. All right. So, by the way, the greatest thing that ever happened to you was meeting her. I think every one of our listeners can agree on this.
100%.
So she's in the real estate business. She convinces you to get in, but says go to a different company. Do you then have success right off the bat?
So I think it depends on what you consider success right off the bat. But for me, as I mentioned, I had a high school education. By the way, the town that I went to high school, it's called Machadinho, which means little machete in the Amazon. Okay. So coming from there, and when she told me, like, go get a real estate license, I studied really hard and I was still struggling. I never heard of the word appraisal or escrow or so taking this test is very foreign. But for me, it was like getting my first degree. So like when I got my license, which I passed on the first test, I was really proud. Like I was calling my friend and my family in Brazil, telling them how like I'm a realtor, and I took that very seriously. So I was still bartending 6 nights a week, but I would come home at like 3:00 in the morning from the shift and I would be the first one at the office. Didn't know what to do, but I would just show up there well dressed, at least to kind of fake it until I could make it. Yeah. And then my main goal in real estate was to make $10,000 in 1 year, because at the time I was making decent money bartending. And I was like, if I make $10,000 in a year, that's my rent. And that would be fantastic. So all the money I make bartending, great. So literally on that first year, that's exactly what I made. I made $10,500, which again, for me, was extremely success, right? Extreme success. But then being at the office and seeing people, and then I'm like, well, hold on, that person's selling houses. So I can sell 6 houses. Then I made a goal, like I want to sell 6. You know what I'm saying? So I started like with baby steps. And year after year, my goal was always like, who's doing well? What are they doing? I'm just going to copy and follow and pick their brain. And
what was the first system, as far as from a lead gen perspective, that you found that actually worked for you, that you looked up and said, wait a second, I can make a lot of money in this?
Open houses.
Tell me about that.
Open houses. When my wife was like, you do really well with real estate, but I don't want to work with you, she recommended me to go to work at this real estate team from a small little brokerage. So I showed up wearing a really nice suit, like very prepared. The guy hired me on the spot, but he had all these great development listings. So they're all staged. His wife was the stager. So these beautiful houses. So all I did was open houses, and I found a lot of success doing it.
I hear it all the time, by the way, agents today that say, well, open houses don't work anymore. If you were starting again in the business today, would you be sitting open houses?
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? Of course. As a matter of fact, yesterday, we just held this really awesome charity event in Boston. It's a really great charity, and one of the clients that showed up with his wife, they literally closed on the house yesterday for $2.3 million. They listed their house with us for $1.1 million. And the agent from my team that was at the event met them at an open house from one of our listings. And that's I can tell you hundreds of stories.
I want to get into this. And so, friends, this is the time of the show where we take the notes. We're going to unpack something for you that I'm really excited about. Don't worry about taking any notes. I'm taking all the notes. They come out on Thursday in email form. So if you're not getting them, go to MREAnotes.com, enter your email address, and then we send them out to everybody on Thursdays. You not only service homeowners, you service real estate developers, and you've actually created a development company. And I love the way you do it. I want you to walk us through exactly how to create a development company. And you told me the first step was finding the opportunity in the market that you're in. What did you mean by that?
So I'll give you a little bit of background. So once I left the real estate team, I was hired to work for an REO company, and I basically were responsible for representing all these REO listings, which meant we were getting calls from investors every day, multiple calls a day. And because I was working for a team that represented developers, I saw the other side of the business, right? So finding the deal is the number one thing, because you have to understand the value, right? Like, just like if you're working with a retail client, what is their goal? And what is the one piece of value you can provide to them, right? You could be a market expert. You can have off-market opportunities that other agents don't have that's going to set you apart. Well, for a developer, the one thing they care about is the deal. So the person that brings them the deal is going to get the business. So instead of focusing, which 99.9% of agents do, which is like, hey, how many times have you heard this, Jace? I have this great developer, this great investor that I'm working with, and they're spending countless hours with this person. And guess what happens? When they do come across something, that person says, oh, I found something else. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Versus if I'm finding the opportunity, then I get to control the opportunity. I don't need that developer, because the deal is a deal.
That's such a big mindset shift, by the way. When you look at real estate, you look at it differently than that might be something I can list, or that might be something I can represent as a buyer. You look at real estate and say, what's the highest and best use of that real estate? And can I own it and develop it?
Yes. Yeah. And again, a great example is, like, let's say this watch, right? Somebody that doesn't know anything about watch might give me $10 for it. Somebody that knows a lot about watches might give me $10,000 for it, right? Like, so it's about understanding the value of it. So how many people make money by going to these thrift shops, or, because those sellers have no idea what they're selling, and they walk in, they see this gold, and they just take it out of there and bring it to somebody else that pays them a multiple.
Well, Gary says it all the time. And by the way, friends, if you're new to the show, when we say Gary, we're talking about Gary Keller. He, together with Jay Papasan and Dave Jenks, may he rest in peace, wrote a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which is the namesake for the show. And Gary always says that most people master the value of bullshit. And what he means by that is they can tell you what the shoes they're wearing are worth.
Yes.
They can tell you what their phone is worth. They can tell you what their car is worth. But what they don't master the value in is things that go up in value and throw off positive cash flow. But Hudson, people like you wake up and master the value in even just one zip code, and that changes your life.
I can't tell you how many times I made millions, not hundreds, but millions from that. From just knowing the value of something, right? And to answer your question, the first thing is understanding that thing. So I look at, instead of looking at a single family house or a multifamily, I look at the land, right? Like, and then what is the zoning which means on this 50 by 100 piece of land, what does the zoning allow? What does the city want? It's like the tax code, right? The city creates their zoning laws to create value for the city, right? So they say on this block here, we would like to see single family homes. But on this block here, we would like to see high rises, right? And we want those to be separated, right? So the first thing is to understand what is it that house is sitting on, right? Could I turn the single family into a larger single family? Could I turn the single family into 10 units? Those are the things that I really look at.
So you look at a piece of property and you don't necessarily see what it is today. You see what it can be. And in order to explain that, I got to describe where it is that we're talking about. So your central marketplace is in Boston between Harvard and MIT.
Yes.
And so in this area, we have number one, highly affluent people.
Yep.
Number two, high population density.
Yeah.
And number three, expensive home values.
Yes.
Because it's those three things then that gave you the opportunity, which is you ask a very simple question. Can I buy a single family home that's on a lot that with current building codes can be turned into multifamily without rezoning it?
Yes.
That's it, yes?
Yep. Yes, that's it. But I do want to preface that formula can work anywhere. Like my CFO lives in Asheville, North Carolina, and she bought a 45-acre farm. There's no zoning restriction on that farm. So could you turn that farm into a trailer park, right? And put 150 units there and lease the land, and all of a sudden this becomes, it's going from $800,000 to $5 million.
What I found fascinating when we were talking is because of the way you're looking at the property, you sometimes will pay more than just the person who's looking at the house, which you start searching the MLS. So usually investors say, by the time it hits the MLS, it's no good because everyone sees it. You've hacked that.
Yes. Well, everybody sees it, but nobody's really looking.
Oh my gosh, unpack that for us. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, again, yeah. One, like you're saying, because it's on MLS, now I already lost half of my competition because they're not interested. Great. And then you have to remember, I love our industry. I love realtors, but the entry level in our industry is very low. It became a little higher now after this whole situation lately, but it's still very low. So nobody's thought on real estate school of really understanding zoning and valuations and all that kind of stuff, right? So again, you have a realtor that gets a listing. What do? Oh, I'm going to do a CMA. How do you do a CMA? You look at it, it's a single family, 2-bedroom, 1,000 square foot. And do you even ever look at the lot size? That's like, most agents wouldn't even know how to value a lot that's 3,000 square foot bigger than the next comp. So that's the part where, great, it is a single family. It is 3 bedrooms. It is 1,000 square foot. It does have a 2-car garage. And when you compare it to the other ones, yeah, it is worth, in our case, $800,000. But in reality, on a 7,000 square foot lot, on residential neighborhood, in our zoning, I can build up to 3 stories, 3 units, and I can do a accessory unit in the back, which means I could technically put 4 units in one lot by right without having to ask anybody's permission.
That's the genius part. And I went deep on this, friends, in the pre-interview, and I want you to understand this. Here's an example. There was a property on the MLS that was asking $1.4 million. Hudson ended up paying $1.6 million for it, which beat out everybody else because he saw the opportunity. He divided that property into 2 lots and put 3 units and an ADU on each of them. On each one. So that's 8 units, including the construction. The total redevelopment for both lots was $5 million. But they each sold for $4.5 million. Hudson, you had a gross profit of $4 million on that deal alone.
Yeah.
You say, yeah, straight-faced, as if you don't realize that everyone right now is driving their cars into parking lots and stopping to listen to this. That's so fascinating to me.
It is. And again, I can't blame the realtor that listed that property. right? Because he wasn't taught to know zoning. He was just taught to know, like, this is, on that case, it's a 3,000 square foot single family home on a large lot. And the other single families were selling for that price, you know. And again, even my competition, most of them don't know. And when I say my competition, I'm referring to other developers. They don't do enough or concentrate enough in this town to know that they can do this ADU. And this ADU is very straightforward. It costs pretty much $500,000 to build, but the resale value is a minimum of 1.2 million. So if I bought that house, broke even on the front unit, just the ability to build one that I put 500 to sell for 1.2, I'm already making a gross profit of $600,000.
That's exactly right. All right. So if I'm breaking this down, number one, it's choose my preferred area. And in that, I now have to become an absolute expert. If I get this wrong, tell me, in three things. One, the values of the property within it.
Yes.
Number two, the zoning and the building restrictions within it.
Yes.
And number three, the lot sizes and the differentials between all these properties.
Yeah. Or I would say number three is construction costs in tiny. And then again, you could be sitting there saying, well, I'm not a contractor. I'm not a builder. I'm never going to know that. Well, you don't need to be. You need to pick up the phone and call a builder and say, hey, Mr. Builder, if I were to bring you a great opportunity to build a 3,600 square foot single family home and and put a swimming pool, whatever, right? How much would that cost you to build? That's it, right? And by the way, Mr. Builder, once you have permits in hand, how long would it take you to build this single family? Right? And then I pick up the phone and I call an architect and say, Mr. Architect, if I were to hire you to give me permits on this lot with this description, how long would it take for me to get the permits approved? And they might say 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, who knows? Right? And that's when you put it together. So you don't need to know that. You need to be able to pick up the phone and call people that know it. And make sure they're reliable source. So just to say, be clear, maybe don't call, if it's your first deal, don't call one builder, call three.
I'm going to understand all these things. The opportunity is going to be in buying single family homes that are on lots that with the current codes support more than one unit. That's your niche.
And by the way, it's not single family. It's buying lots that support more units.
Great.
That's it.
Once you then go, you find the lot, you then make an offer on that lot, and offer comes with a due diligence period.
Yes.
You send that then to an architecture firm of some sort, and that firm then sends you back a drawing of what you can build on that property. Is that right?
That's correct.
That part seems massively important to me. So walk me through, how did you come to that? How did you find the architect? What should I ask my architect for?
So keep in mind that I'm trying to do this for low cost or no cost with, and the leverage that I have is to say, hey, Mr. Architect, I run the number one team in this area, right? Or I am a very successful realtor in this area, or I'm part of the number one brokerage in this area, right? Let me create this concept here for you to pick up my call, right? I specialize in working with investors and developers, and I have a few architects that I work with. I would like to know that if you would be able to run this zoning analysis for me, and what I will give you in return is if we get this deal locked up, I will make sure that you're going to be the architect on the deal. Which, by the way, for these guys to do this, it will take them half an hour to an hour. Okay. So you're trading half an hour to an hour, depending on how good they are and if they're really from that town, for the potential for them to make $60,000. Again, depends on the size of the project, right? But that's the trick. Just like how we make any calls, right? Why would you pick up the phone to call somebody that potentially could sell a house, and why would they hire you, right? But that's what I do. Now I'm at that point where Actually, the architect came to my charity event last night, right? Like he knows he gets so much business from me because our team does that. I expect him to pick up my call and he knows what I need, right? So that's basically the piece.
So, and I have one in front of me, friends, and we're going to share it with you in the one pager, but he's going to give you a site plan. And that site plan is going to show you the maximum potential of that parcel.
Yes.
In that moment, you now decide, I like it and I'm staying with the deal, or I can't get enough juice for the squeeze and I'm going a different direction.
Yeah. And by the way, Jason, because of a large audience that we have, I want to be clear. We could be talking about a single family that's still going to be a single family. And I do those projects all the time. Right? As an example, what is a town? Like in Massachusetts, we have a lot of towns that are very affluent, but you still have those little bungalows from the 50s that family just lived there. And they're very smart, right? Because they allowed everybody else to build. Now they're sitting on a gold mine. Well, again, one simple math that I look is there are certain towns in Massachusetts that I can buy a single family, but basically buying the lot for about $600,000. But I know that the resale value for a 3,600 plus square foot house with a garage and with certain features is upwards of $2 million. Okay. And I could name a bunch of towns here. That's doable, but I don't want everybody to decide to move to Massachusetts. So, but the reality is now I know, listen, if the resale value is 2.2 million, or in the case, the one that I have listed right now, 2.350. Okay, I can deduct the commission. And then I look at the construction cost of that quality of a house is $1 million to $1.1 million, right? And then, but I'm only paying $600. There is a $300,000 to $400,000 profit there.
Sure.
Is that worth my time, right, for your client? And by the way, I'm getting a commission on 600, then I'm getting a commission on 2.3 million. Or what a lot of realtors miss is that because that seller's not offering a commission, they're missing the opportunity of getting a $2.3 million listing. That's really what I care about. If I can get a commission right away, great. But on my eyes on the 2.3 million, which by the way, Jason, the latest one that I did, my development company developed it. We got a commission. We bought it for $650, got a commission. The investment specialist from my team brought the deal. We bought it. There was a commission. We listed for 2.350. We just closed it for 2.3. Guess what? Buyer agent from my team was doing the open house. Guess what happened? Buyer came in. She got them to sign. They bought it.
Open houses still work.
Right? Then my development company made a profit. Again, could have been my client. Right? But we got 3 commissions. And now we have a very satisfied client that's on our database, that's getting our magazine, that's getting invited to our events. But it works with a single family. But the thing that you have to understand that's very important is who is the client? Like it's the same thing. What is the product here? And does it fit the market? Right? Like, is there a market for a $2 million house in this location? Because as you know, it doesn't matter how nice of a house you build, you have to build it in the right location. Otherwise, you're not going to sell.
And that, by the way, that was the next step. So number 1, choose your area and then learn those 3 buckets of things. Number 2, understand who you're going to be able to sell it to, or you really don't understand the market value of the future product.
Yes.
Then number 3, either build it or sell it to a developer, builder who's going to be thrilled to have it.
I had a client that called me on a property in Somerville, Massachusetts. This is a few years back. And they said, hey, I have this 2-family house. So in Massachusetts, we call it 2-family. We call it a duplex or whatever, with this extra lot. And the guy told me, it was a mother and the son said, we want $1.2 million. And I showed up as a realtor. I was like, listen, I brought all the comps. I was like, listen, this is great. Thanks for having me here. Let's go through these numbers. At the time, I'm like, look, every multifamily here is selling for $800,000 to $850,000. So the reality is what you have is an $850,000. Now, if you really want to get 1.2 million, and again, I'm representing that, right? Here's what we could do. If you are able and willing to sell it to a developer, contingent upon their ability to put an additional, because in that case, the zoning allowed for 3 total units. But because of the lot configuration, I knew that we could convert the front unit into one and build two townhouses attached to each other in the back, right? I was like, if I have that, I know the resale value of each unit is 1.2 million. At the time, did the math. I was like, somebody will be willing to pay you your 1.2, but it has to be contingent on their ability to build. Guess what? They agreed. I called some of my clients. One of my clients decided to do the project. The client actually hired my construction company to build it. We built it, and then we listed it. Long story short, the client was very happy because I was able to get them 1.2 million for their house. It took 6 months, but it was the difference between making 800,000 or making 1.2 million.
And that makes you invaluable to those people.
Yes.
See, that's the difference between being a functionary and just reporting the news and being fiduciary in your case, Hudson, which is you're an advocate for them and you're doing something for them that very few people can do.
Yes. And on that note, Jason, that's why in learning from KW and all the other great agents that we have, that's why on our team, we have a 3-piece offer where we offer them to list it for them. We offer to do off-market sale to bring all the developers in the area, or we give them a cash offer for their house. And we explain to them that, listen, putting on the market is going to most likely net you the most money, right? But as you know, there's various reasons why they don't want to put it on the market. If I can still bring all the developers in the area, and charge a smaller commission, and you get to choose. If you don't like any of the offers, then maybe you could go on the market, right? And the third option is I can just give you an offer right now. And this is what we would be willing to pay. But you have to understand that at this price, we have to make a profit, right? Or our client that's ultimately is going to close on this would have to make a profit.
Sure. I think people love options. So number one, I'm going to understand the area. I'm going to understand the value, the lot sizes, my building cost and timeline. Number two, I'm going to start looking for property both on the MLS because now I'm valuing them differently and off the MLS. Number three, I'm going to know what the future buyer will want to buy so I don't end up building an arbitrage that no one wants. And then number four, I'm either building it by partnering with a builder or I'm just selling the deal to a builder.
Yes.
If I end up building it, then I have step number 5, which is, okay, now I got to go market it for sale just like I would anyone else's house. Yeah. So the number one thing that I'm going to hear from our audience, I'm going to get emails because of you, Hudson. Oh. I know it. And they're going to say, well, it's easy for Hudson to say Hudson's rich. Hudson lives in a mansion in Miami. He runs a business in Boston. He makes a cash offer. For him, he's got all the cash in the world.
And he's very handsome.
And he's very handsome. So if I don't have all the cash in the world, but my heart's beating fast listening to you describe this, can I do this with little cash or do I need to be rich?
Yeah, again, the first thing that you said is you make an offer, you have a due diligence period, right? When I say I present the client with 3 options, and one of them is we can give them an offer, I am not coming up with a bag of cash to close on the house. I'm basically knowing that I have a deal, right? Like it's a deal for them because they agree to it. They're okay. They understood their option. But I also know that at this price, I can make some calls and somebody's going to buy it. So it's not my money, period. In some of those cases, it is my money, right? But that's not how I started.
It makes all the sense in the world to me. By the way, friends, full disclosure, I have a lot of buddies that have invested with Hudson in these projects and have done very well. So I'm not just guessing that this works. I know this works.
And by the way, Jay, one thing to point out that's very important is like, who are the most qualified people in the country to look at something, and come up with a value and to understand who the right buyer is?
Real estate agents, us.
Real estate agents, exactly. And by the way, why? Because you're on the market every day. So you look at it and say, okay, hold on. If it's a listing that I'm walking to, and I know, by the way, I don't want to sit on this thing for 6 months. I want this thing to sell. what do I want? What do I want that listing to look like? That's the beauty of doing this. I get to design my future, which means I tell them what I want so they can be happy and I can be happy, right? So I'm not stuck with this thing that's not going to sell, right? And by the way, I am the most qualified person to understand this because I'm in the market every day. I get feedback from buyers all the time, so that is critical. That developer doesn't know that. What they know is construction issues, is headaches, is putting up with a million pieces that need to come together. They're really good at that, but they're not very good, not because they're not capable, but because they're not in the market looking at, walking people through a living room or a kitchen, the wife saying, I don't really like those cabinets. Oh, how come they didn't put, a secondary sink? Where am I going to wash my vegetables? This is like, we're suited for this. That's where we bring value to the table.
That's what I find so exciting about this, because I think real estate agents, by and large, wake up every day, and there's nothing wrong with it, but they only think about helping other people buy and sell. I read a stat the other day, Hudson, that less than 8% of real estate agents own at least one piece of investment real estate. And my head exploded, and I'm angry about it.
Man.
We should be building wild amounts of wealth in owning real estate and developing real estate and creating our own inventory. I mean, this is our industry.
How many realtors that all they talk about is crypto?
That's such a good point. I do get a lot of my crypto real estate brothers and sisters telling me to buy.
And that's fine. But my view is, I have nothing against it, but my view is, I am an expert in crypto. It's like if I'm a jeweler, and I'm an expert in diamonds, and then I decide to go into real estate.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can take a rough diamond and turn it into something so beautiful that can sell for millions. But instead of doing that, let me go do something that I know nothing about. And then let me rely on everybody else. Like, that to me is...
It's insane. Me too, by the way. Me too.
Yeah. But for selfish reasons, I think it's great. Because that way I keep buying and I keep doing more.
Let me ask you this before we switch gears. You live in a beautiful home in Miami. You walk out of your backyard. You walk to your boat. I mean, everything is gorgeous. How do you stay tied to what's going on in Boston when you're living in paradise and it's 0 degrees and your whole team is waking up there working? And why don't they hate you for that?
It's funny because I used to kind of hide that. Even you were like, should I let people know that you're in Miami? I'm no longer ashamed of living a life by design, okay? And I think it's a very clear thing. In 2018, I came to Miami with my wife. We had just had our third child. I was not sleeping. Our business was exploding. And that year, coming here, I was able to drive my kids with a golf cart to go get my coffee and hang out with them. And that month, I sold 26 houses. Our team sold 26 houses in Boston, and I didn't have to fly to Boston. And it was like, a light went off. I'm like, I am moving here. My wife was on board. Within 4 months, we moved here, and we've been here since because I want to spend time with my kids. I want to spend time with my wife, period. You know what I'm saying? Like, just like Gary. I mean, Gary is the greatest example of that. He said, I will not fly anywhere, right? Like, I forgot that you know more than me, but I know that if I want to meet with him, or if you want me to meet with him, he might send me a ticket in a hotel for me to go to him because that's how much he values his time and his life by design, right? And that's the same thing for me. So and now to answer your question, my job is to analyze zoning, right? It's to make contacts. So when it comes to that, one thing that we didn't really focus so much on in this conversation is like, look, you need to be an expert in a specific area. So I cannot talk about the state of Massachusetts or the state of Florida. Where I live, I can talk about Coconut Grove, Pinecrest, and Coral Gables, and look a little bit of Brickell. That's it. I don't know anything else. So I don't look at anything else. In Boston, I look at Cambridge, Somerville, Arlington, Medford, and Hingham because I have a beach house in Hingham and my wife grew up in that town. So when I'm there for the summer, I see a for sale by owner and I know zoning and I'm like, hey, we should just build another house there, right? That's how I operate. But because I only focus on these 4 towns, when something comes up, I don't care what the house looks like because I'm not saving anything. Does that make sense? I don't flip houses, or I don't really work with people anymore that flip houses. We only focus on real estate development. It's just a shell. So I'm not trying to save anything. So me looking at it, and if I need somebody, I'll call somebody and say, can you please drive by? Can you do a FaceTime call with me? But that now with Google Earth, I can see what the house looks like. I can see the street. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love it, man. You could do it from anywhere in the world.
I'm not trying to fool anybody. Would it be better if I was there? Sure. But am I willing to get that advantage over sacrificing time with my wife and kids on the weekends and the weather here in Miami? No.
I want to switch gears. You read the MREA book. Well, you and I have spoke about it before, man. But what about it grabbed you? What was your big aha after you read it?
It was following a system. It was so clear, so simple. And by the way, it's called the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. It's not called the 100 Millionaire Real Estate Agent. So that's why I'm waiting for Gary to write the Billionaire Real Estate Agent book, because to be candid, right? I think that's where everybody struggles. After you graduate from becoming a millionaire real estate agent, that's when you start trying to figure things out.
That's when you listen to this podcast. That's where
you also see some people fail miserably, right? Because then they start to switch gears. So up to that point, I was very proud to say I probably did one of the best jobs among all of the AW agents. So I was really following it, building the team. Exactly. So for the longest time, my profit margin was to the T with how the MREA, because that's literally how I built it. And to me, it was very simple. It's like step number 1, hire an assistant. Step number 2, hire a closing coordinator. Step number 3, you start getting a buyer aid, and then they came up with the showing assistants. And, and the last thing you give away is your client, but you give away all the tests before that and keep in touch with clients. And my trajectory was I was doing everything. And then eventually I gave away buyers. And then I was working with sellers and developers. And then I gave away the sellers. And now I'm at the point that I even gave away the developers. I only represent my own development company. I don't represent clients anymore.
It's awesome. I got one last question for you, Hudson. The way you grew up, I can't think of a greater juxtaposition between how you're growing up and how your 3 kids are growing up. Of all the people that I interview, it's this most stark contrast. How do you raise them? Because they have everything. They have everything plus everything. Do you think about that?
I can tell you how I do it, and I have a really great example. My daughter, she's the best student. She goes to the best school in Miami. For her to be cool, she has to study to be as good as her friend, right? Which is incredible.
You love that.
Yeah. Oh my God. But she's like, Dad, I really want the new Apple headphone. And I'm like, I am not spending $500 on headphones. And she's like, well, but Dad, that's the only thing I want. I'm like, I don't care. I will not spend $500 on something for $25 can do the same work. So one day we went to do a lemonade stand, which I was like, okay, my wife brought the lemons. I was here with them, my son and my daughter. I made my son squeeze all the lemons. He's 6 at the time. Took our golf cart, parked right outside of our gated community. And Coconut Grove. So we're right on this beautiful bike path. Women would pass by and like, here's $20. And just give them money. So in less than 2 hours, they made $180. So divided by 2, they paid us back. We spent $20 on recipes, and then they each got I remember $79 or something like that. And this was right before this headphone conversation. I was like, but hey, I'm not paying for it. But if you really want this thing, you can go to a lemonade stand. Clearly, within 2 days, you can buy this thing. Do you think she has done the lemonade stand?
I don't think so.
No, she hasn't. But to me, the beginning of our conversation, talking about value.
That was the lesson.
Right? The reality is that you have to earn it. If I just go pay for these stupid headphones, they're never going to value money. I can tell you 100 stories of me not.
I think that's so smart because you set the bar so it forces them to value. And in the case of your daughter, she opted out, said it wasn't worth it. And in the case of your son, he's practicing every day.
Yeah. And it's as simple as that. If we don't value, you know this. We all know this. You got to earn it. If I gave you a Ferrari, you're not going to take as good care of it as if you worked really hard, you put that picture on the wall, and you sacrifice your night out with your buddies to do that extra deal to buy a Ferrari.
No, 100%. I want you to know, Hudson, because you and I are close, I will honor the Ferrari you give me, and I will treat it like I earned it. I want you to know from me that you know that.
No problem.
All right, Hudson, the people that listen to this are going to fall into two groups. You're going to have one group that says, I'm literally going to go take action and I'm going to go study zoning and I'm going to do this. And then you have the other group that looks up and says, I have a bunch of money and I'm running a great business now. I don't have the time and I just want to invest, which, by the way, I think you will be well served. How can people reach you?
Hudson, Hudson at santanateam.com. Send me an email. And by the way, we will be doing a class to kind of focus more on this conversation, give more value. So if you're listening to this, send me an email. We can send you the link for the date and time for the Zoom for that class.
Hudson, I love what you're doing. The thing I wanted to get across in this episode of the show is that you have a choice to make. It's either that you wake up every day and you think about helping people buy and sell, which is great, or you wake up every day and you think about the value of the real estate and what the highest and best use is. And I think you're really onto something. And I love the fact that you share the way that you do. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me, man. This is great. I hope the people get some value out of this conversation.
I almost bailed out of this episode when I found out he used to sleep without air conditioning. I want to be completely transparent with the audience. I couldn't even get past it. I was thinking about it the entire time. That said, that man is a genius. I know I say it all the time. It's because we keep finding geniuses. The idea that you're driving by properties and you don't know exactly what you could do with them is blowing my mind. And he's right. I've driven by properties. I mean, think about it. When you go home, you're going to drive by the same lots. What if I told you that some of those lots don't need to have one house sitting on them, that they could have three, and you don't have to get anything rezoned? That's what he's saying. Hudson isn't looking up and seeing things for what they are. He's looking up and seeing things for what they could be. And that makes him a genius. Number one, I'm going to pick my area. I'm going to understand the value. I'm going to understand the lot sizes. I'm going to understand the build time and cost based on the current zoning. Then I'm going to go find properties that have a big enough lot to do the thing I want to do. Then I'm going to make sure I understand what buyers want to buy so that I don't build something that I can't sell. Then I have a choice to make. I'm either buying this thing and building it myself, or I'm buying this thing and I'm selling it to a builder. Then it's just marketing whatever it is that I built. I know that when you hear the idea of tying up property and redeveloping it and doing all this, it sounds complicated, but I just want you to know it doesn't have to be. You can make this simple. I just want you to do one thing for the next 3 weeks. On every single appointment you go on, I want to ask a question. Is this, the way it's being used today, the highest and best use of this property? That's question one. And then question two, do I want to help someone sell this, or is this a property that I want to buy and either hold or sell? Those are the questions, friends. Go forth and do likewise. There it is. That wraps another episode. Friends, I don't know what you're taking out of this. I really don't. I'll tell you what I want you to be taking out of it, which is these are the people that are having tremendously big lives. And the reason it's happening is because they're setting up the models and systems to do just that. Gary Keller told me that leadership is teaching people how to think so that they do the things they need to do when they need to do them, so that ultimately they get the things they want when they want to have them. And that's what I want for you. You're all leaders, but it begins with leading ourselves. If you're enjoying this podcast, I want you to click the subscribe button anywhere that you get your podcasts. We want to be the voice in your head every single week, and every week we're dropping new content. We also send out a newsletter at the conclusion of every show to make sure that you get the highest points in the models and systems that were discussed. So if you want to sign up, I need your name and your email address. Head over to the millionaireagentpodcast.com. millionaireagentpodcast.com. Enter your name and your email address, and every week that newsletter will be in your box. Friends, you just went on a journey. I hope that what happens between now and the next time we meet is absolutely wonderful for you. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not Keller Williams Realty LLC and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information. Warning: you must comply with the TCPA and any other federal, state, or local laws, including for B2B calls and texts. Never call or text a number on any do not call list, and do not use an autodialer or artificial voice or pre-recorded messages without proper consent. Contact your attorney to ensure your compliance.